On April 24, 2025, the day after prosecutors say he took the life of a 14-year-old girl in his Hollywood Hills home, David Anthony Burke placed an order on Amazon. The item he ordered was a shovel. It was delivered to his home that same day via Postmates. He paid for it under a fake name. 1 week later, on May 1, 2025, he went back online and placed another order. This time, it was 2 chainsaws, again delivered to his Hollywood Hills address, again purchased under the same fake name, a name that was not his, a name prosecutors say he used deliberately so that nothing about those purchases could be traced back to him. 4 days after that, on May 5, 2025, a third order was placed, a body bag, heavy-duty laundry bags, and a blue inflatable pool, all of them delivered to the same address, all of them purchased under the same fake name, Victoria Mendez. That name did not exist. There was no Victoria Mendez. There was only David Anthony Burke, a 20-year-old musician whose debut album had just been released, placing orders for equipment that prosecutors allege he needed because of what he had done to Celeste Rivas Hernandez. And while all of those orders were being placed and delivered, he was also still sending text messages to Celeste's phone. Messages asking where she was. Messages asking about her whereabouts. Messages that looked, to anyone reading them without knowing what prosecutors allege had already happened, like a person trying to reach someone they had lost contact with. Prosecutors say those messages were not what they appeared to be. They say those messages were part of a deliberate plan to create an alibi, to make it look like Celeste had simply disappeared after leaving his home, rather than what prosecutors say actually happened. He sent the last of those messages on April 26, 2025. After that date, prosecutors say he never attempted to contact Celeste's phone again, not once. This is the most complete picture we have yet of what prosecutors say David Burke did after April 23, 2025. It is a picture built from Amazon order records and delivery logs and text message data and DNA evidence and the account of a Caltrans worker who found something on a highway in Santa Barbara County in January 2026 that should never have been there. This is the full updated story of the D4vd's case. Every detail from the latest court filings, every development leading up to the May 26th preliminary hearing, and everything you need to understand about where this case stands right now. Before we get into all of it, subscribe to this channel right now. We are covering this case every single day, every court filing, every hearing, every new development as it becomes public. The May 26th preliminary hearing is coming, and this channel will be here for every moment of it. Hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and do not miss a single update. Now let us go through everything from the beginning. David Anthony Burke was born on October 13, 2004 in Beaumont, Texas. He grew up in a household shaped by Christian faith. He was a teenager who discovered early that he had a natural instinct for music and sound design. He began by making videos of himself playing the online game Fortnite and posting them on YouTube. From there, he moved into producing music for video games professionally. One of his tracks became the official Fortnite theme anthem, which put his name in front of an enormous audience of young players around the world. In 2022, when he was 17 years old, he released a song under the name D4vd's. The song was called Romantic Homicide. The title, given everything that has followed, carries a weight that is almost impossible to sit with. The song spread across TikTok and YouTube at the speed that only genuinely resonant music moves. It was melancholy and cinematic, and it found a generation of young listeners who felt something in it they could not fully articulate. By the end of that year, he had 2 multi-platinum singles. Major labels were paying attention. The machinery of the music industry turned toward a teenager from Beaumont who had built something real from nothing. Prosecutors allege that also in 2022, David Burke and Celeste Rivas Hernandez first came into contact. Celeste Abigail Rivas Hernandez was born on September 7, 2010, in Lake Elsinore, California, in Riverside County. Her family had roots in El Salvador. She grew up in a working household where her parents were building a life in a new country. She was a child with a full life ahead of her. She was enrolled at Lakeland Village School in Lake Elsinore. She had teachers who knew her name. She had parents who loved her. A former teacher of Celeste's confirmed to reporters that the two met through social media. He said he learned about the connection from his students after the case became public. An 11-year-old child and an 18-year-old rising music star connected through the platforms that young people use every day without their parents watching every interaction. The April 29, 2026 court filing by the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office alleges that criminal conduct began the following November, when Celeste was 13 years old and Burke had recently turned 18. The filing describes a pattern of conduct that prosecutors say was ongoing, sustained, and documented in detail by the digital evidence recovered during the investigation. The iCloud data and device content recovered from Burke's accounts, according to prosecutors, contains photographs, not just messages, photographs. The court filing describes images depicting Celeste when she was 13 years old in circumstances that make clear the nature of what prosecutors allege was happening. Those photographs are now part of the evidence prosecutors say they will present at the May 26th preliminary hearing. In February 2024, Riverside County authorities found Burke's phone number in Celeste's phone records after her parents reported her missing. At the request of Riverside County, the Los Angeles Police Department conducted a welfare check at Burke's rental home in the Hollywood Hills. Officers went to him directly. They told him face-to-face that Celeste Rivas Hernandez was a 13-year-old child who had run away from her family. Her age, her status, stated clearly and directly by law enforcement. Prosecutors allege that after that welfare check, after officers had explicitly told David Burke that she was a 13-year-old child who had run away from her family, Burke paid a junior high school student $1,000 in cash. The purpose of that payment was to get a secret cell phone into Celeste's hands. Her parents had confiscated her original phone in an attempt to end her communications with Burke. He allegedly arranged for a peer at her junior high school to give her a replacement device that her family did not know existed. A secret line of communication, purchased and funded by Burke, placed in the hands of a child through another child after a direct warning from law enforcement. Celeste Rivas Hernandez was reported missing by her family on April 5, 2024. 3 separate missing person reports were filed. Surveillance footage reviewed by investigators showed Celeste was still alive at various points through 2024 and into 2025. She was somewhere, she was not home. And, according to prosecutors, the contact between her and David Burke was continuing. The filing describes the nature of that contact during this period. The two spent time together, including weekends at Burke's Hollywood Hills home and trips to multiple cities. The filing specifically mentions Las Vegas, London, and Texas, where Burke's family lives. They traveled together. They were in regular communication. Prosecutors describe a relationship in which Burke, according to the filing, led Celeste to believe they had a future together.
By April 2025, David Burke was days away from the biggest professional moment of his life. His debut album, Withered, was scheduled for release on April 25. Everything was lined up. The record, the press, the tour, the kind of launch that artists spend years building toward. The filing says the relationship between Burke and Celeste broke off in November 2024, but that they continued to communicate and see each other after that point. The dynamic, according to what prosecutors describe in the filing, had shifted. Celeste had become aware that Burke was also involved with other women. She was not the only person he was in contact with, and that knowledge, according to prosecutors, was building toward a confrontation. On April 22, 2025, text messages show a lengthy and heated argument between Burke and Celeste. The filing describes messages that reveal Celeste's deep emotional distress over learning about Burke's relationships with other women. Prosecutors write in the filing, and these are their words directly from the document, that she threatened to expose him before his album dropped. 2 days. His album was 2 days from release, and the person prosecutors say he had been in contact with since she was 11 years old was telling him she was going to tell the world what had been happening. According to the filing, Burke's response to that threat was to arrange a ride. On April 23, 2025, prosecutors allege Burke sent an Uber to pick up Celeste Rivas Hernandez from Lake Elsinore and bring her to his home in the Hollywood Hills. The car dropped her off at his residence a little after 10 in the evening. She arrived, and prosecutors allege that very soon after her arrival, David Burke stabbed her to death multiple times and stood by while she lost her life. The words in the filing are exact, and they should be read exactly as they are written. Prosecutors wrote that, knowing he had to silence the victim before she ruined his music career as she had threatened, very soon after her arrival at his home, defendant stabbed the victim to death multiple times and stood by while she bled out. Stood by while she bled out. The LA County Medical Examiner's autopsy report, unsealed on April 22, 2026, determined that Celeste died from multiple penetrating wounds to her upper body. The wounds were consistent with a sharp instrument. She was 14 years old. She would have turned 15 on September 7, 2025. Now we get to what happened next, because what prosecutors allege David Burke did in the days, weeks, and months that followed is laid out in the April 29 filing in a level of detail that goes significantly further than anything that had been part of the public record before. He did not call anyone. He did not seek help. He did not turn himself in. On April 24, 2025, the day prosecutors say Celeste was killed, David Burke gave a radio interview. He also attended a record release party promoting his debut album, Withered, which was set to drop the following day. He appeared publicly, he interacted with people, he spoke about his music. The world that would be watching his album debut the next morning had no idea what prosecutors allege had happened inside his Hollywood Hills home fewer than 24 hours earlier. Also on April 24, he placed the Amazon order for a shovel delivered to his home that same day via Postmates, purchased under the name Victoria Mendez. On April 25, his album Withered was released and debuted at number 13 on the Billboard 200. That same day, a recorded interview he had given to Songwriter Universe was published online. In that interview, Burke spoke about his creative process, his songwriting, his inspirations. He mentioned trips to London and Houston. He described loving London for its gloomy atmosphere because, in his own words, the music he makes is really sad. London and Houston are two of the cities prosecutors allege he took Celeste to during the period they say the conduct was ongoing. He described those trips as creative experiences on the day his album dropped to the public. Between April 23rd and April 26th, Burke also sent text messages to Celeste's phone asking about her whereabouts, messages that appeared to be from someone looking for a person they had lost touch with. Prosecutors say those messages were deliberate. They were part of what the filing calls a premeditated plan to cover up what had happened. He sent those messages knowing, according to prosecutors, exactly where Celeste was. After April 26th, he never sent another message to her phone, not one. On May 1st, 2025, under the name Victoria Mendez, he placed the Amazon order for 2 chainsaws, delivered to his Hollywood Hills home. On May 5th, 2025, also under the name Victoria Mendez, he ordered a body bag, heavy-duty laundry bags, and a blue inflatable pool, delivered to the same address. Prosecutors allege these items were used in Burke's garage to carry out the process of concealing what remained of Celeste Rivas Hernandez. LAPD forensic investigators who examined the garage found bloodstains. They collected DNA samples from those stains. The DNA matched Celeste's genetic profile. The medical examiner who performed the autopsy also found something else: small blue plastic fragments embedded in her remains. Prosecutors believe those fragments came from the inflatable pool purchased under the name Victoria Mendez on May 5th. Her remains were placed into 2 black bags, her head and torso in one and her arms and legs in the other, and put inside the front trunk of Burke's white Tesla. The vehicle was then used for the remainder of his day-to-day life until late July 2025, when surveillance footage captured Burke driving the Tesla and then parking it around the corner from his rental home before leaving on a concert tour. Prosecutors also allege Burke made multiple trips to a remote area in Santa Barbara County, approximately 110 miles northwest of his Hollywood Hills home. He made the first trip in the period shortly after April 23rd. He returned to the same area on May 8th, leaving his home around 11:30 at night. He returned again on May 31st. The filing does not specify everything he did on those trips, but on January 17, 2026, a Caltrans worker performing routine highway maintenance on State Route 54 in Santa Barbara County found something lying off the side of the road. It was Celeste Rivas Hernandez's United States passport card, in an isolated area near the route Burke had traveled multiple times. The Tesla sat abandoned on a street in the Hollywood Hills from late July 2025 onward. Prosecutors say that during this entire period, Burke was telling friends, business associates, and people around him that the smell coming from the car and from his home was something other than what it was. He had explanations. He offered them when people noticed. The explanations had nothing to do with the truth. On August 5, 2025, the Withered Tour launched. Burke performed in Del Mar, California. He went on to perform in cities across the country. He was on stage in front of fans who had been streaming his music and buying tickets, and who had no knowledge of what prosecutors allege was sitting in an abandoned Tesla in the Hollywood Hills while he played those shows. On September 3, 2025, the Tesla received a parking citation for violating the 72-hour ordinance. On September 5th, it was towed. On September 8th, a worker at the Hollywood tow yard noticed a smell and called the police. Officers responded. They found the bags in the front trunk. Celeste Rivas Hernandez had been there since April. She was found the day after what would have been her 15th birthday.
By September 16, 2025, the Los Angeles County Medical Examiner had completed the forensic identification. The investigation that followed was extensive: multiple search warrants, device seizures, iCloud recovery, wiretaps, 3 separate grand juries whose existence was confirmed publicly for the first time at the April 30, 2026 court hearing. Those grand juries had been convened for investigative purposes and used their subpoena power to compel testimony and gather evidence that standard investigative methods could not reach alone. The scope of the digital evidence recovered is significant. Prosecutors revealed at the April 23, 2026 hearing that more than 40 terabytes of data were collected from Burke's computers, tablets, and iCloud accounts. 40 terabytes is an enormous volume of material. Processing that volume is one of the reasons prosecutors cited when explaining the length of the investigation. They said the sheer volume could slow the progress of the case toward trial. The material recovered includes the text messages, the photographs, the Amazon purchase records, location data from his Tesla, and additional material that prosecutors say is extensive. Among the material found on Burke's personal iPhone, prosecutors revealed, was a significant quantity of deeply illegal content involving minors. That content is now part of the evidence the prosecution intends to present at the preliminary hearing. On April 16, 2026, LAPD officers arrested David Anthony Burke at a residence on Marmont Avenue in Los Angeles. He was taken into custody and held without bail. On April 20, 2026, District Attorney Nathan Hochman stood at a press conference in front of a photograph of Celeste Rivas Hernandez and announced the formal charges: first-degree murder, continuous criminal conduct against a minor under 14, unlawful mutilation of human remains. The special circumstances attached to the murder charge include lying in wait, murder for financial gain, and elimination of a witness. Special circumstances under California law elevate the case to the most serious category of criminal prosecution.
If convicted on the charges as filed, David Burke faces either life in prison without the possibility of parole or the death penalty. Prosecutors have not yet announced which sentence they intend to seek. That decision is still pending. Burke entered a not guilty plea to every charge. Defense attorney Blair Burke stated at the arraignment that the defense's position is that the actual evidence will show David Burke did not take Celeste's life and was not responsible for her death. At the April 30, 2026 court hearing, Burke argued that the 9-page prosecution brief that had been filed should be sealed from public release. She described it as entirely one-sided and argued it would taint any future jury pool. The judge denied the request. Burke and co-counsel Marilyn Bednarski then requested that the preliminary hearing be pushed from its May 1 date to allow more time to review the volume of evidence. The judge granted that request. The preliminary hearing is now scheduled to begin May 26, 2026. It is expected to last 4 to 5 days. Burke appeared in court that day in an orange jail jumpsuit, shaven, handcuffed until he was seated. When the judge asked him directly if he agreed to the new date for the preliminary hearing, he said 2 words, "Yes, Your Honor." That was the totality of his public communication at that hearing. His defense team also submitted a request asking the court to allow Burke to receive new clothing before the preliminary hearing. The judge denied it. She did approve an order for him to receive a haircut from the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department before May 26th. The reaction to this case in the wider world has been significant. Fortnite, the video game platform that helped launch Burke's career and that had sold in-game content featuring his music, announced that it would be offering refunds to players who had purchased those items after the charges were announced. A video game company distancing itself from an artist it had used to generate revenue for years because of what that artist is now charged with. Streaming platforms removed his music following the arrest. Spotify, Apple Music, and others took down his catalog. The Withered album is no longer available on the platforms where it debuted at number 13 on the Billboard 200 just over a year ago. The family of Celeste Rivas Hernandez, represented by attorney Patrick Steinfeld, had initially planned to speak publicly throughout the proceedings. After the April 29th court filing was released with its detailed allegations, Steinfeld released a statement saying the family had chosen not to make any public comments.
Statements now or in the future. He described informing them of each new development in the filings as heartbreaking. A family that has already lived through a missing persons case and the discovery of their daughter's remains in a tow yard is now reading in documents filed in open court the alleged specifics of how she spent her final hours. They have chosen to grieve privately. That choice deserves complete respect. Burke's family has maintained his innocence throughout. His defense team has stated clearly and repeatedly that they believe the evidence will support a different conclusion than the prosecution's narrative. The American legal system grants every person charged with a crime the presumption of innocence until a jury returns a verdict beyond a reasonable doubt. That principle applies here as it applies in every case. The preliminary hearing on May 26th will allow a judge to evaluate whether the evidence meets the legal standard required for the case to proceed to trial. From there, if it proceeds, a jury will make the ultimate determination. What the court documents already in the public record describe is a prosecution built on multiple independent categories of evidence that appear to reinforce one another. Surveillance video placing Burke as the last person to drive the Tesla before it was abandoned. Text message records documenting the argument on April 22 and the fake alibi messages sent between April 23 and April 26th. Amazon purchase records under the name Victoria Mendez tied to deliveries at his home address. DNA evidence from blood samples collected in his garage matching Celeste's genetic profile. Blue plastic fragments found in the remains matching the material of the inflatable pool he allegedly ordered. Location data placing him in Santa Barbara County multiple times after April 23rd. Celeste's passport found off a highway near that same area. 40 terabytes of digital material from his devices. Photographs. iCloud data spanning years of alleged contact.
The defense has stated that the actual evidence, when properly examined, will support their client's innocence. On May 26th, the process of examining that evidence publicly begins. Celeste Rivas Hernandez was born on September 7, 2010. She was a child from Lake Elsinore who had parents who loved her, who filed 3 missing person reports trying to bring her home, who have now sat through the public release of the most painful details imaginable about what is alleged to have happened to their daughter. She deserved to be protected. She deserved to grow up. She would have been 15 years old last September. Her name deserves to be spoken. Her life deserves to be remembered. And every person who streamed D4vd's music, who bought a Fortnite skin connected to his brand, who shared romantic homicide because something in it moved them, deserves to know the full truth of what the man who made that music is accused of doing. This channel is here for every chapter of this story, every day. May 26th is coming. We will be in every detail of that preliminary hearing the moment it becomes public record. Subscribe right now if you are not subscribed already. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update on this case. And drop your thoughts in the comments right now. When you look at everything in these court documents, the fake name on the Amazon orders, the texts sent to her phone after prosecutors say she was gone, the trips to Santa Barbara County, the passport found off a highway near that same area, 40 terabytes of digital material from his devices, what do you think the defense argument is going to be? Do you think there is a path to a different conclusion? And what does justice look like for Celeste Rivas Hernandez? I read every single comment, every one. I will see you tomorrow with the next update on this case.